this video. We were just discussing how everything is protected and preserved within coexistence. All four orders are protected thanks to coexistence, thanks to each other being complementary to everything, being complementary to each other, and everything therefore adjusting and balancing themselves in tune with everything else. And that therefore everything gets conserved. This is something we were discussing.
But you think out of the four, one of them is humans also?
Yeah, minus humans. Everything is adjusting
minus,
to humans,
exactly.
but humans are not adjusting to anything.
Plants, animals, minerals, and
so minerals, the material order, then the plant order, then the animal order, and finally the knowledge order, which is humans.
So the fourth one is not, the human order is not, then there are only three.
Yeah. But the three are also adjusting and complementary to the fourth order. So only one direction, I mean, well, the three directions coming out of the human order are, showing errors. Like human complementarity to the animal order, our complementarity to the plant order, and our complementarity to the material order is all under question mark. But
and human to human also.
Of course, yes, human to human also. But everything else is complementary to all the other three, including humans.
Yeah.
So, and also we had discussed how these are, how they manage to be in order is on the basis of law, regulation, and balance. So just to do the words in Hindi again, because they're going to come up again and again. It's niyam, niyantran, and santulan. And then for humans, of course, we enter nyaya. Okay. Where? Let's find the point.
क्रिया में हम संलग्न रहे, ये शायद है सर्व मानव में घर किया है। हमारा कोई ऐश्वर्य उदय होने वाला नहीं। मानव से अधिक यदि कुछ होता है तो देव मानव ही होता है, दिव्य मानव ही होता है। इसके बारे में आगे और अच्छी ढंग से चर्चा करेंगे।
Right. We had also discussed what would be there beyond simple humanness. There would be godly humanness and divine humanness.
और समझने की कोशिश करेंगे। मैं समझता हूँ हर व्यक्ति समझ भी सकता है, जीवन में चरितार्थ भी कर सकता है। ये सहअस्तित्व की महिमा एक परमाणु अंश से चलकर एक ग्रह गोलों तक ये स्पष्ट है।
So, this significance of coexistence is apparent from the smallest of atoms to the largest of planets in this way.
उसी क्रम में आगे चल करके जितने भी हमारे सम्मुख स्थित जंगल है, पहाड़ है, ये भी जितने भी खनिज हैं, ये भी अपने में आपसी में सह अस्तित्व के आधार पर ही और अपना वैभव को प्रस्तुत करते हैं।
We've done this also.
एक शोध होती रहती है, फलस्वरूप इसका गवाही है अनेक प्रकार की जो रचनाएं हमारे सम्मुख। मनुष्य का शोध कार्य का स्रोत है।
So then you talk about how there is this tendency for inquiry and actually the tendency for exploration in every single entity of existence, and this tendency for exploration is thanks to coexistence, thanks to being saturated in this omnipresent entity. And this sort of tendency for exploration therefore also exists in humans, and in humans it exists in the form of our mental capacities.
तो कल्पनाशीलता, कर्म स्वतंत्रता पहले बात, उसके बाद जो बनती है जो उनका विचार शक्ति, इच्छा शक्ति, संकल्प शक्ति और ये सभी शक्तियां अपने आप में अनुसंधान करने के लिए, शोध करने के लिए तत्पर रहते हैं। इन तत्परता के साथ ही तो इन 10 क्रियाओं के साथ जीने वाली क्रिया और जीने वाली वैभव, जीने वाली संपदा, जीने वाली जो वैभव है ये प्रमाणित हो पाता है।
This also we have done, that in humans, this tendency for exploration is first and foremost in the form of our imagination and free will. And thereafter, also, if you look in more detail, in the form of our power of hope, power of thought, power of desire, power of resolve, and power of authenticity. And in this way, our exploration goes on even in the form of our evidencing our understanding.
इन 10 क्रियाओं में मुख्य मुद्दा यही है जो अनुभव होना, अनुभव।
Right. And in these 10 activities, the main focal point is experiencing
मूलक होना।
and being experience rooted.
तो ये विधि है समय इंद्रिय सन्निकर्ष मूलक संवेदनशील पद्धति से जी पाना, वो अभी तक हो चुकी है।
So there are only two ways. The first is to live in context of sensory appeasement, which we've already concluded, which we are already living through.
दूसरा अनुभव मूलक विधि से जी पाना।
And the second is to live by way of experience rootedness.
अनुभव मूलक विधि से जीने के लिए स्वाभाविक विधि में हमारे पास स्रोत बनी हुई है, जीवन अनुभव करना चाहता ही है।
And for living with experience rootedness, the natural way is already set forth for us. It is already accessible to us, the source of this living, which is that the Jeevan wants to experience. The Jeevan naturally wishes to experience.
तो पहले आपको यह स्मरण दिलाया था, हर व्यक्ति अपने को अनुभवशील मानता ही है और समझदार मानता ही है और न्यायविद, चिंतनशील और न्यायविद मानता है।
And this I had already drawn your attention to earlier, that every individual already considers themselves to be knowledgeable, to be what was it? समझदार मानता ही है, न्यायशील, knowledgeable, just, thoughtful, and experienced.
और न्यायविद चिंतन मानता ही है और समझदार मानता ही है और न्यायविद चिंतनशील और न्यायविद मानता है, न्याय चाहने वाला बना ही रहता है।
And considers them and remains a seeker of justice also.
इतना तो सभी व्यक्ति में अपने को एक सर्वेक्षण से पता लगता है।
This much, at least, is possible for every individual to see for themselves via survey.
इन विधि से हम मनुष्य का अध्ययन को शुरू करते हैं। न्याय चाहने वाला यदि है, न्याय पाने का भी अधिकारी है। न्याय पाने का अधिकार को अभी तक अपन
In this way, if we start to study a human being, that they do seek justice, but they are also the entity that is an authority, that can be an authority on justice.
पाने का भी अधिकारी है। न्याय पाने का अधिकार को अभी तक अपन ध्रुवीकरण नहीं कर पाए।
But this authority on justice is something that we have not anchored for ourselves as yet.
क्योंकि जो जितने भी न्यायविद, जो न्यायमूर्तियां होते हैं, जितने लोगों के साथ मेरा संपर्क हुई है, उनसे ये बात पूछा गया है, आप क्या न्याय जानते हैं? हम तो न्याय नहीं करते हैं।
Because all the न्यायविद, न्यायमूर्ति are judicial people in the judiciary, or high judges in high positions that I have come across, whom I have met. When I have asked them that, do you do justice? They have replied with a negative, that no, we do not do justice, we only take decisions.
ये बात पूछा गया है, आप क्या न्याय जानते हैं? हम तो न्याय नहीं करते हैं। और यही कहते हैं, यदि ये सच्चाई है, न्याय को समझने के लिए न्यायपालिका में आवश्यकता है।
And so this is what they say. And if this is the truth, then in order to understand this, our judicial system is yet to understand justice.
यदि ये सच्चाई है, न्याय को समझने के लिए न्यायपालिका में आवश्यकता है, न्यायालय में आवश्यकता है। और वही न्यायालय का छोटा सा स्वरूप होता है घर। हर एक परिवार में भी इस न्याय को समझने की
And so our judiciary, our courts, our judicial courts, all of them need to understand justice. And a very small, I like how you said it.
स्वरूप होता है घर।
Sample.
Yes. So a small sample of court of justice is our homes. And so in our homes as well, we need to understand justice.
हर एक परिवार में भी इस न्याय को समझने की आवश्यकता है।
Every single family, in each family also, we need to understand justice.
न्याय को समझने के लिए जब हम प्रवृत्त होते हैं, हमारे पास रास्ता सुगम हो जाता है, वो है संबंधों को पहचानने की बात।
So when we develop an affinity to understanding justice, our path towards it also becomes traversable.
पास रास्ता सुगम हो जाता है, वो है संबंधों को पहचानने की बात और मूल्यों को निर्वाह करने की बात।
So as soon as we develop this affinity to understand justice, our path towards it also becomes easily traversable. And that path is to understand relationships and to live out the values inherent in each relationship.
ये दोनों बात सटीकता से मैंने चरितार्थ होता है, उसी समय से हमारे पास मूल्यांकन करने का जो अधिकार है प्रयोग होता है, फलस्वरूप उभय तृप्ति उसका ध्रुवीकरण करता है।
And both of these things are capable of fructifying with great precision. And as soon as that happens, hi Prachi.
I so sorry, I just lost track of time in something.
That's okay. That's what the recording is for. Okay, so we were talking about how a study of humans leads us to need to understand justice, because each human is a seeker of justice and has the capability of having authority on justice. But as yet, we have been unable to anchor this authority on justice. So we need to understand it. And everyone needs to understand it. Even the courts of law definitely need to understand it, because they don't as yet, despite being courts of justice. But even a smaller sample of a court of law is also every single family. So each family also needs to understand justice. And then he's saying, as soon as we become keen to understand justice, our road to understanding it also becomes easily accessible. And the road towards it is to understand relationships and to understand the values inherent in each relationship that have to be lived out. And as soon as these two things are understood, and these two can be understood with great precision, each relationship and its values can be understood with great precision, and therefore they can be lived out, and therefore it can be that understanding can fructify with great precision. And as that happens,
प्रयोग होता है, उसी समय से हमारे पास मूल्यांकन करने का जो अधिकार है प्रयोग होता है, फलस्वरूप उभय तृप्ति उसका ध्रुवीकरण करता है।
So as soon as we start living it out, the relationships and values, we develop the authority to be able to evaluate. Since we're living out values, we develop the authority to evaluate, and on that basis also to experience mutual satisfaction, mutual fulfillment. That these two also fructify, these two authorities.
हम संबंधों को पहचाना हो या नहीं पहचाना हो, इसका ध्रुवीकरण उभय तृप्ति के आधार पर हो पाता है। दूसरा कोई विधि से न्याय का कोई भी प्रमाण मिलने वाला नहीं।
So whether I have recognized the relationship or I have not recognized the relationship, the evaluation of that can only be anchored on the basis of mutual fulfillment. It cannot be evaluated on any other basis. It cannot be anchored on any other basis other than mutual fulfillment. So I find it really valuable actually paying attention to this point, because a study of justice, he's saying, is complete. Even the first step, which is recognizing the relationship. Remember, he was talking about how as soon as we recognize a stranger on a train that we're sitting on, as soon as we see that this is a friend of ours, immediately the values start to flow, and we will offer our seat to them. And similarly, in other situations, if we recognize someone as our teacher, our very natural response to that is a flow of this sentiment of gratitude and reverence and all these things. So, or similarly with parents or children. So what he's saying is that this will be the one-sided effort, but it will also be recognized from the other side. And if that recognition of that relationship has been done properly, then the evidence of that will only be that both will be able to feel fulfilled. And there is no other measure of whether justice has happened or not, of whether you have been able to even recognize the relationship or not. So you may think you've recognized what that relationship is, but without having understood what that relationship is, we'll keep doing something or the other will flow, but it won't lead to mutual satisfaction. So that is our test. And if we are not mutually satisfied, then it tells us that we actually haven't even recognized that relationship properly. So this is what we need to keep checking again and again. Is there mutual satisfaction? No. If no, then what are we missing in understanding that relationship and then in recognizing that relationship? So I find this very
But Drishti,
practically
that's
useful.
two-sided also, no? Like, is it possible to one-sidedly bring in mutual happiness or satisfaction in a relationship?
Yeah.
I have so much to say on this, so much disagreement to say on this.
I thought so. That's why I wanted to pause here a bit.
Because things, circumstances change, people change, I change, the other ones change. How do you go, and what was looking mutual suddenly doesn't seem mutual, and suddenly, doesn't make sense. Suddenly the justice seems all off, either by me or the other person, whichever. Obviously, I'll think that person will think I'm being unjust, that kind of
Right. But that's,
mismatch.
I think, so what Prachi is asking would probably come before this, on whether it's possible to be, whether it's possible to be just only from one side or not. Because, then even if the other person is not just, is there any possibility of mutual satisfaction? That would become the question. I think that
What Prachi said, I already assumed that I will think I'm just, but the other person thinks I'm not just.
right. So here the criteria for justice is that there is mutual satisfaction, mutual fulfillment, right? So it can never be that I think I'm just, because if I'm seeing that the other person is not feeling fulfilled, then that itself tells me that I'm not being just.
The other person has its own baggage.
Yeah,
And that
that's
person-
why I'm saying that, how, like, take any relationship, and if other person is operating from certain system and they have their own things, their own thought process, how can you do something, like, it seems so impossible sometimes in very basic relationship. I'm not even saying a very close relationship, but very day-to-day relationships with general people, like your landlord, like someone who helps you, your house help, anyone who is not, they have their own life, they have their own thought process, growing up process, and you can be your best out of your capacity, but other person is not receiving it or not getting it, it's not able to appreciate it, and you can't blame them also, because they have different ways to appreciate and they look at different things. But then what can you do which is like not doing injustice to yourself and being kind to others? And even if you're doing, like, I'll tell you very real thing, I feel this, that even kindness become a very, like a poison if you're being kind and other person is not being kind according to what you think kindness. Maybe other person also is kind in their mind, they're like, we are being kindest, but
Hmm.
feel that other person is rude despite of you being kind again and again, and out of your kindness or out of your, you know, shyness, or avoid conflict, or not to say something that it might feel bad, or you don't know how other person will react, then you don't say anything, and you are being kind on face but internally you are unhappy with the relation. Then it also starts accumulating here, it starts being in your mind, and it feels like a no escape way.
Hmm.
It's not even a relationship where you would say ki I will invest a lot of my energy to solve this with this person, and you're not even sure that that person is interested in solving it with you, or they have even time to give to solving it, they don't care for it maybe.
Right.
So how do you really get to mutual satisfaction is
Justice.
beyond my understanding as of now. Where you can't talk, like if it's my mother, it's my father, then it's a bigger important relationship, and I will fight, I will invest more time, I'm ready to invest more time, and they are also ready to invest more time. But when
Right.
no one is interested, or you are not sure if other person is interested, then it's a very puzzling thing to me.
So in this situation, there are two people getting unhappy, right? First is you, and the other person is also unhappy, right? So it's mutual unfulfillment. So in this situation, if you look at it one by one, how I understand it is that what is causing your unhappiness? For instance, say someone I'm just neighbors with, or is my landlord or whoever, they have a short temper or something, and for no reason, they snap at me when it's not really justified. So that if that is hurting me, of course it has something to do with the fact that they are doing it, but their action is triggering a reaction in me. So there are two parts involved here. One part is their action, but the fact that that action is ending up hurting me in some way, that is with me. So sometimes, because sometimes if someone's shouting at me, it might not hurt me at all. Or if the same person were to snap at someone else, they'd be like, okay, well, whatever, it doesn't really bother you. So that kind of tells us that this response of mine of feeling hurt is coming from within me. They are triggering something that was already within me. So there is some sort of, for instance, very obvious to me at times that I get hurt by someone because they have said something that has kind of, वो जले पे नमक छिड़कना type हो जाता है, where I already had a wound and they are just kind of pressing on that wound, and that's triggering me. So, say someone says something about you, which you're already insecure about, or which you're already feeling not so confident about, then, or through their behavior in any way indicates towards that. Say them snapping at you indicates to you that you are an irresponsible person. And that's something you yourself lack the confidence in. Then
Yeah.
it'll hurt you for sure. Then there's no way that that will not hurt you. So how do we what gives us the ability to not feel hurt by the other person? And that comes from our confidence in ourselves first.
Yeah.
So that has to be first.
And I think what you said is correct in some cases. Another reason is recognizing the relationship wrong. Like you are hurt because you recognized it wrong, and then set up wrong expectation
Right.
of behavior from other person. Because like you said, it's right that if a stranger is shouting for some reason, your mind will not that be that bothered. You will say, "ठीक है, stupid है," or
They have
whatever.
something going on, maybe. Yeah.
क्या प्रॉब्लम है, चिल्ला रहा है, अपना अपना काम करो, निकल जाओ, you don't care. But because you have set the expectation, I don't know this person, I don't understand iska situation, and I don't get affected. But if you have set expectation in some relationship, you have recognized it wrong, and then that person behaves differently than your recognition, then the hurt is caused.
Yeah.
So maybe the game is to that you have to realize that you recognized it wrong, and then you now recognize it right and move on.
Yeah, because that's the second other kind of big insecurity. First kind of insecurity is about who we are, and if whatever their actions trigger some sort of shaking up of that feeling of whatever we have believed to be our identity, then we get hurt. Another situation in which we get hurt is when we thought this relationship was a certain way, and suddenly their indications are showing us that it's not that way. Then we feel threatened. Arey, I was relying on this relationship to be this way. Now what? So that's a major reason we get shaken up, right? So in that situation, again, it has to do with our understanding of what this relationship is actually supposed to be. So this brings us back to that difference between faith and confidence. When you understand a relationship, when you understand a human being, when you understand the Jeevan, then instead of having faith in it, then you are unshakable in those areas, right? Then no matter how much anyone says anything, you will be able to see ki, acha, this person is agitated right now. That's why they're saying this way. When they calm down, they also have the same need. Maybe our relationship right now is feeling uncomfortable to them. Therefore, they're taking it out in this way. But if you understand that, say your mother and yourself, if you understand what that relationship is really about, a parent-child relationship, then no matter how she behaves in a particular instance, you will know that when that kind of behavior is stemming from something else. It is not because that relationship is not what you thought it was. Because you have understood what that relationship is in its general universal sense, which is a law of nature, basically. And so this particular behavior is coming from some other factors. So then you'll go about trying to understand those factors and address those factors. Similarly with other relationships, like your spouse or your sister or your friend or your worker, whoever, colleague. But it's because we're not sure. Sorry, just to complete. It's because right now, all our notions of what any relationship is supposed to be and who I'm supposed to be and who I'm supposed to be in these relationships, all of that is just very vague and, very, it's all based on faith. We have some notions, but they're not fixed in anything. They're not anchored to anything solid. So they're all floating. So we are very insecure regarding those because we've held on to something. It was giving us some comfort. As soon as that gets questioned so seriously by someone, we feel threatened because we are not anchored in it. Because then we have, supposedly good reason to think about whether our notions were correct or not. So when that is what changes when you have confidence in yourself. And then it is, so the first step is, of course, having understanding, which leads to confidence in oneself. And only then do you have the capacity to be just. Before that, therefore, we can not be just. We don't have that capacity only. We don't have that authority before being confident in ourselves. And we can only be confident in ourselves when we have a basis in actual understanding and not just in faith, belief.
Also, is it like some relationships are very clear on face? No, I know this is my sister, like a blood relationship or your relative.
Yeah.
With relationship with other people, even spouse, not spouse, once they're spouse, then also relationship is clear. But before they are their spouse, like having love relationship or finding partner, like recognizing people slowly, like, recognizing what relation there with time, with faith, with confidence, with like ticking things that this is it, rather than on your whim or, that imaginary story which we create about people in our minds in first, second meeting, rather than having that judging on based of evidence-based recognition, basically evidence-based recognition of a relationship rather than a whimsical or an emotional recognition, or awe-based recognition of a relationship. So then you have done it more thoughtfully,
consciously, mindfully. Yeah.
So then you will operate more consciously, and then whenever you reach the clear recognition of a relationship, maybe it will take more time, but that would be solid, confident recognition based on evidence and not just your mind. So then the probability of this shock when other
Yeah.
person doesn't think of it that way will reduce. You can't still guarantee, but
Right. But you
will
can really
be
mitigate. Yeah.
yes.
Because it's not only in your head. No, say if you're courting someone, you're thinking of going towards a spousal relationship. If you have this clear criteria in your head, and you know that this criteria will also work for others because this is a universal natural criteria, you can actually talk about it then in those terms. Okay, right now we are at this, this is what we are. We are not that. And this is what this means, and that is what that means. So we can talk about it, articulate it explicitly, and go about doing this mutually consciously. And if that is not possible, if the person is uncomfortable with doing that, that is a possibility, of course, at that particular moment, then that also gives you some indication, okay, maybe we can't go that further, that deep into that relationship, but maybe we can keep this relationship in another avenue in which, so much depth is not required so immediately. So for instance, friends or colleagues, you can build a depth gradually. So it's basically about having a definite understanding, a definite criteria on which to function.
And I think what I am taking the most important is stepping on the basis of evidence in anywhere. Like
Hmm.
stepping on the basis of evidence rather than anything else, like your
Hmm.
belief. And then, like even our friends, we think like end up thinking, oh, they are great, and knowing them very
Hopeful.
little, right? And they
Yeah.
may be very great, but you know that person very little. So
Yeah.
just not reaching conclusions too soon on anyone, whether good or bad, is I think what is very important, even to do justice to other person, and assuming them that what they are. Even if I assume someone to be very good, that's also injustice to them, because you have put so much unnecessary burden on them of being so good out of your own imagination. They are just who they are.
Yeah. So you put them on a pedestal, they're more likely to fall from it. But also, even if a person is excellent, that doesn't mean that that person is already your friend. Being a friend is a definite role someone plays in your life, and that has to take time because that means a certain type of investment in your life, a certain type of knowing of you, and all of that takes time to build. So no matter how good the person is, that doesn't automatically mean that you will become friends like this, because all of these relationships are a particular definite process also that take some time to develop. So, Manjuji, what was your as angle to this conversation?
I better keep my mouth shut.
No,
No,
no, don't do that.
no, I don't know. It'll take me time to really understand it. It's not.
Okay. Well, whenever you feel
I'm
comfortable.
not in agreement. I'm not really in agreement. That is, I always call
Yeah.
this part of the whole thing too idealistic.
Yeah.
Everything else is okay, but this part here, when I come, I find it as though it's as it should be. Yeah, perfect, very nice that way. But
Yeah. At least we can agree that this is desirable. Whether or
like my
not.
driver, like
Hmm.
my driver,
Hmm.
his wife, they have two children. No, his wife fell in love with someone, left her and ran. They got her back, put order, everything. Sure, and she has some and money-wise, all the money he would give her. And she whacked up, she did all that. This is what he says. Even she was here. There were some, we were trying to reconcile the whole thing, but she had her own problems with him.
Hmm.
Not much, but that way. So I don't know, like, kahan just kya, it's so complicated.
Hmm. No,
Not
of
even there's
course.
my own life, in
There,
my own life. There are so many examples and nothing, everything is complicated in relationships.
of course. I mean, either so naturally there's going to be a huge mess everywhere when we are not see this justice is a capacity we have. It's not something we automatically are able to do. And for that to be able to live up to that capacity, to have authority on that capacity, we need to do all this homework. No one has done it. right?
See,
No one is
also
doing
that
it. So how will we reach there?
you have to play the game together. Two people should be wanting to work on this.
Well, minimum one person. Ideally, of course, it'd be great if both parties were, involved in playing this game together. But even with one minimum, like he had mentioned this a bit earlier, that all conflicts require at least two parties, minimum two parties. So if in a two-person engagement, one party has already decided that that conflicts need not be there. I don't want to be the root of the problem. I want to be the person who addresses problems. And I have the ability also, very importantly, it's not just a wish. It's also developing the ability to be able to address problems, which is what resolution is at the end of the day. If even one person is like that, वो conflict हो ही नहीं सकता, right? So it's not just a wish, it's also an ability. That's important to remember, and we have to build that ability. And वो the old saying कि ताली दो हाथ से बजती है. अब एक हाथ is refusing तो बजाओ the ताली तो कैसे बजेगी ताली? You know. But this is not to say that it's very easy. I mean, it's very straightforward, but it also requires work.
When you're working, you don't know if you're on the right track or not. No? You can't just work. It's like you're uneducated and you start learning something. You don't know whether you're learning it only correct or not. No?
Yeah. So here's telling you your own criteria for checking also. Criteria of evidence is also mutual fulfillment. Maybe you don't have mutual fulfillment all day, all night in all relationships. But when you start thinking about this more consciously, when you're living in relationships and you have certain situations, you draw your attention to the fact that, okay, what is this is my relationship with this person? Are both of us feeling mutually fulfilled in it? No, yes. If no, then why? What is this relationship all about? What is the meaning of this relationship?
I might think that the other person is feeling fulfilled, and the other person who's not very vocal, say, might be might be feeling depressed and dejected with the whole thing and wanting maybe to space or whatever you call it. So
that's where our sensitivity comes in. I mean, sensitivity is not to be thrown out the window. It's our sensitivity to others that allow us to gauge that are they actually fulfilled. You know, if we're not sensitive, we'll be in our own
what
head.
do you do? Okay, if you gauge, then what do you do? You ask, you bring up the other person, say, everything is fine. Just yesterday in the car, I could see the husband, wife. The husband was upset about something. And the wife kept saying, what are you upset? And he said, no. But it was quite obvious he is. But he doesn't want to talk about it. And he won't. And I asked, so he'll tell you anyway. He says, no, he'll never tell.
Yeah.
And they don't do anything. They look quite nice. Everything looks nice. But this is how it is. For example.
So that someone was sensitive enough to notice that the other is hurt, even when the other is saying, no, actually, I'm not hurt. So that's great, because that means they are sensitive. But now we also need the other aspect to address it. To be able to address it, we need sensitivity as well as cognizance, which is understanding of how to address it, understanding of what the hurt might be coming from, understanding of what that relationship actually is, and therefore understanding what is lacking in that relationship. If we don't know all this, then how will we be able to address it? So we need both capacity.
You don't know you're wrong unless the other person tells you, I don't like the way you said this, or I wasn't happy, it made me feel. The other person's not saying anything, you can't keep guessing, and that means all the time you'll be blaming yourself. I must have said something. So the other person's not saying anything. What did I say that the person? All the time you just blame yourself.
That's not always like, if you become curious about the fact that, if say my sister is upset with me, and even if she's not willing to tell me, she's not willing to tell me because she doesn't trust me, to be able to take that information well. Usually that's the case. But if I still become curious and she's adamant, I can still pay more attention, and then I am able to find out, oh, this is why she was upset. Oh, it will take a little more time than if she were to just tell me directly. But if I start paying attention, I will
if
be
you're not living together, don't have that many chances in time, because by the time I meet her, then say I'll go off, and then next time another thing, and I'll be like,
So that's an important point, actually. In order to be able to live out justice in relationships, we need to have some consistent relationships to begin with. Justice cannot happen between strangers or acquaintances.
long distance type of relationship. Yeah.
कुछ तो एक तो hurt भी हमारे को direct अपने committed relationships में ही होता है actually, and addressal will also be in committed relationships.
में भी होता है पर डीप हर्ट कमिटेड में होता है, अदरवाइज तो हर्ट तो कहीं से भी आ सकता है, लाइक इट्स आल्सो ऑन अस ना, हाउ
हाँ.
मच घाव आर देयर, क्योंकि नमक तो हर जगह है, एवरीवेयर देयर इज सॉल्ट एंड सॉल्ट एंड सॉल्ट.
Yeah. Actually, if we have a wound on us, then salt we can get from anywhere to put on that wound.
The way the world is ना, समझ की जो शिक्षा है वो तो लिमिटेड ही है, तो
हाँ.
एवरी ओपन वुंड, सो इट्स जस्ट you can throw anything and you will get
Yeah. So one wound is, so एक तो part यही हो गया to identify whether they're feeling hurt because of something in them only, or are they feeling hurt because something in our relationship is actually lacking. So if it's the latter, then there's something I can still do. So in that
This.
case is what I was saying कि वो वाला जो hurt होता है ना, where there's something lacking in a relationship, that hurt only comes from in committed relationships, because from non-committed relationships you don't even have those expectations, right? Because you don't need to have those expectations, because there are no roles as such that they are playing. I mean, they are playing some role. So of course, if even if your old classmate starts to talk really badly about how you treated them back then, who you have no connection with right now, maybe you will still feel bad, because it will give you some sort of indication that I had a role to play in their misery today. It's very far out, but still it's still relevant. We all but basically that solving situations is also going to happen through our committed relationship and our committed effort to fixing that relationship, whatever we recognize that relationship as.
yeah.
Then I have to go back to how to recognize a relationship.
That's what
I think that is the toughest thing, and I feel Manju, personally, like I just really feel this is really tough, and I think evidence based, like slowly, like every relationship now I am looking back is where I feel is a struggle, is because I judged it wrong in the beginning and then behaved wrongly because I judged it wrong in the beginning, and now I am paying the price for it, because like you became maybe too open earlier based on very little evidence. So you have set the wrong expectation for the other person, or you have set the wrong expectation of other person in your mind, and that's the problem, which is now. And the thing with which I feel is, once you have committed that wrong recognition mistake now, that also now takes time to solve.
balance out. Yeah.
So it has happened. So it's like now a recovery process, or cleaning up your mess process, which is even more slower, and it takes way more time than it took to commit that mistake.
Yeah. So I think,
I said ditto.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
what I couldn't hear that.
Ditto.
Ditto. Yeah. So I mean, it gives us incentive to
Sorry. So it boils down at the end of the thing, like she's doing, I do, we blame ourselves. I must have done, I misjudged. It was maybe that person's an idiot here.
Yeah. So even then, that is a mistake. Na? That's what I am saying. I'm not saying that person is not an idiot. I am saying that I did not recognize earlier.
So we have to, kaise bhi ho, we have to blame ourselves. That's what it comes to.
It's not about blaming, it's about taking responsibility.
No, it's blaming. Responsibility. So tab le sakte na, if the other person speaks up and or wants to move forward, or
No, I mean, what is stopping me from taking responsibility for a relationship today? Like, instead of being like, oh, Drishta, you were so stupid, you were so silly, you were so much, so and so, whatever. That's blaming. That's just a sentiment of rejection towards me. Whereas today, instead of doing that, I can just be like, okay, so I didn't recognize this then, but I can recognize this now. And now how do I fix it? And then I go about understanding what I need to understand in order to fix it. And that is taking responsibility. There is no need for that whole sentiment of, berating oneself or ridiculing oneself. That is completely, that happens when you have no other alternate. When you have no other solution to offer instead, then maybe you'll go into berating and kosna and all that. But if you have a solution, why do you want to waste your energy and sentiment on those things?
No, I
Go
think she's
ahead.
meaning when there's no solution. Now
Yeah.
it's she has to work on it backwards now. I
Yeah,
think
but-
that's what she's doing, whatever. Even I'm saying the same thing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, if she's, I don't know.
No, I'm saying this only. And we can call it blame. I to believe at the end of the day, it's correct. It's responsibility and blame are also, if taken positively, similar. That I take responsibility for this, or I blame myself for this, in a way, means same.
No,
That
I told you, yeah.
accept.
No,
It's,
not blame. There is a very clear difference between the two. It's the difference is of the sentiment behind it.
sentiment
Bhav
associated.
kya hai? Because
Yeah.
that changes the whole thing completely.
But
A
at what level?
slap and
same.
a caress. I mean, प्यार से किसी को ऐसे थप्पाना and slapping them, the action and the force and the everything might be exactly the same, but if the sentiment is different, that whole action is completely different.
Correct.
So, in
And
this
how
way,
objectively you take it. It's what you're saying is subjectivity around it, and I am treating it as little more objectively. Objectively, it's what you said, like what? You're correct. We're on the same page. So what I am saying is, even it's taking responsibility, and it becomes a learning curve then, that I did not recognize earlier that this person is an idiot. So
not that this person is an idiot, but that I don't have the capability of dealing with where they are today.
Yes, wherever they are. So now I recognize it. So now I will at least act accordingly. And also I'm learning from this, that from next person, be more vigilant before understand, recognizing or behaving with someone, that who this person is. So it's
And
also
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then I can't hold myself because I'll forget what I have to say.
go on.
I went through this process also. Then I said, ये तो बड़ा भाव तोल वाला relationship है. Where's the heart? Where's the emotions? Where is the free flow? Where is the freedom of speech and thought? And this like tol mol, like soda karoing.
Right. So सौदे करने की बात नहीं
Then
actually.
do-
That's what even I was going to say something there. कि it's not really about holding myself back in the next relationship. That's not a solution. That's a reaction. Because I still feel hurt by what happened. If I'm feeling hurt, that means I haven't found the solution. And
No,
therefore,
because
it's a reaction.
no, not hurt. Hurt भी नहीं. जब hurt खत्म भी हो गया.
गुस्सा,
So you,
कोई भी विरोध का भाव, any sort of negative feeling.
yeah, you feel that you have made your response. You will take responsibility. No problem. So I must step very carefully. I mustn't do anything that I've learned. I learned so much. I must be stepping very carefully now.
That is, that is another indication that we haven't actually understood, that we are still in reaction. We haven't taken responsibility. We are still blaming ourselves. Because when someone is in the state of resolution and responsibility, one is confident, one is not shaken up and, nervous all the time. That's the opposite of being confident. So what happens? What allows you to not be nervous and not be like, oh no, ab agli baar, wo jo doodh फूक के, there's some saying like that, कि एक बार जला फिर दूध
चलो इतना भी नहीं, but you have to not, you have taken responsibility. You don't want to be the same old person who.
No, that's not taking responsibility. That's not it. Taking responsibility is not that I'm not going to be the same old person. Taking responsibility means I did not understand the person in my relationship earlier. Now I'm going to understand that person. Earlier I was not. By seeing who they are.
As she said, as Prachi said, by being more vigilant, watching.
No, not by being vigilant. Not by being vigilant. I'm saying this is not, I'm not talking about the next relationship. I'm talking about that very relationship that I felt that I had, been too hurried about or not judged properly earlier. In that very relationship, taking responsibility means seeing what that relationship is all about. So if I had become a friend too quickly, I did not have the capability of being a friend to them. They did not have the capability yet of being a friend to me. Yet I jumped into it and forced them to jump into it and started calling ourselves friends. And now both of us are disappointed. In that situation, as soon as I realize that this is what I have done, I will take responsibility by seeing, okay, what does it mean to be friends? And if we are not there yet, where are we? And what can I do in order to be more like a friend to this person? And that includes understanding where they are, and helping them also in their comfort, in their own um, uh, speed, basically at their own pace, to reach this state. Because clearly, if we both agreed we want to be friends, then we both agreed on a sort of goal, but we're both not there yet. Neither of us are there. So I will move towards it, and I will help them move towards it at their own pace. How do we do that though? What is the way of doing that? That is something for me to understand first. It is from that I need to understand what friendship is, what humans are, what is our pace, what is capability, what is capacity, what is receptivity. All of these things I need to be able to understand if I'm going to help them reach there, right? So that is the homework I need to do to be able to live out any relationship. That is what it means to take responsibility, not to be like, okay, this is not going to happen, I was wrong here, so next time I'm not going to build friendships only, or I'm going to be wary of the next person. That is not a solution, because solutions are going to be more in the direction of justice, more in the direction of harmony, and not in the direction of wariness and withdrawal, right? That is our litmus test. So, but we can always, in the next situation, we are now more prepared, better prepared, because we are already doing homework in this relationship. We are already prepared to know ki acha abhi meri capability, how capable am I in starting a friendship here. If I am not this capable, then okay, I'll recognize we're not really friends yet. We're maybe at this acquaintance stage or whatever. In order to recognize stages also, I need to know what relationships are, right? If I don't know what relationships are, what stages are, then how am I going to recognize where I am and where the other person, a potential friend or whoever, is? So for that also I need to understand. For that also I need to study. But this is not a heartless, feelingless study. I am doing all this study so that I can do justice to people that I want to be with, right? It is, even the process of study is coming out of the sense of wanting to do right by them. I don't want to hurt them. I want to be fair to them. I want to be committed to them. That's why I want to understand what it means to be committed to them. It's like when a mother studies what it is to do, how, when an expecting mother or parents start studying how to raise a child, they're not studying without feeling, they're studying with feeling. It's not a transactional thing. So it's that sort of understanding and that sort of responsibility.
Yeah. I think I agree to what you're saying. I think what Manjuji said was, but in a way, like what I took was that more like what she was saying, I felt was that spontaneity or that kiddishness we have sometimes is like, you can not kiddishness, but that spontaneity of, being
Just as you are, at ease.
especially their personalities. Some people are not like very spontaneous by nature, but some people are very open, very spontaneous by nature. But then understanding, uh, because that's what opens the door, right? That you didn't understand and you jumped too quickly. So then, in a way, this is what I deciphered when she said the word soda is it feels to some people when they slow down, even when I slow down, then I feel it's like you're being more slow, thoughtful, different words for it, but not as spontaneous as you would be because of understanding that being so spontaneous or being just so much of whatever you call being yourself, all open, all out in one go, has resulted in,
These issues.
results in your past. Not always. Sometimes it has, sometimes it hasn't. So then you become little less spontaneous as a person.
Yeah, so I think that is easily seen even in terms of anything that we start to learn afresh or understand afresh. So for instance, say when you start riding a cycle, if you feel like a child feels like, oh, I've been walking so well and I run so well, I'm sure I can just jump onto the cycle and start cycling and I'll be fine. And then of course the child will fall when they see the others around them, or if their elders tell them, listen, first you need to learn how to ride a bike. That's a whole new skill altogether. Then the child might feel like, oh shucks, then what about my spontaneity? But then the thing is that the learning curve, if you're really motivated, is very like steep. And so once you've learned it, of course, in that period when you're learning it, you will have to be a bit more careful and a bit less spontaneous, because spontaneity comes from something that you already know. Now you're just freely living it out. But this you don't already know. So while you're learning, of course, it'll be a little slower. But once you've learned it again, it becomes part of you. Then you're spontaneous on the cycle also. So similarly, you become, when you know what it means to be a friend, then you don't have to think about it. You're not going back to some sort of analysis or calculation. You already know it, you recognize it, you feel it, and you're just living it spontaneously. But you need that little bit of time. It's like multiplication also. Before you knew 3 3s are 9, it took you a while to be like, oh, 3 1s are 3, 3 2s are 6, 3 3s are 9. Now it's spontaneous. So something like that.
Very, yeah, very nice way to put it, to explain it. Yes, there might be some pause, and then again, once you understand it more clearly, once or twice you have had success, then it will become a second habit, or then it will again feel spontaneous. So for some time, it might feel like vigilant and cautious or holding yourself back. But
Just
if you're
careful.
coming from a place of learning, then it will become again less of a soda or whatever eventually.
Yeah, not so much as holding yourself back. How I see it is more like I've become more conscious. Right
Getting
now, until then, until now, until I became conscious, I was switched off basically and working from default. जो भी feeling आई वैसा कर दिया, which is not in fact in my control. I'm not actually free when that happens. They've done studies on this to see कि अच्छा किसी को ना किसी और कारण से agitate कर दो. You agitate someone for some other reason and then put them in a situation, and they'll think that it's that situation that is agitating them, and they'll react in a agitated way, thinking that they are responding to that situation. Actually, it was this first thing that had agitated them. So are you free? We are not actually free when we're functioning based on just feelings, because feelings are coming into us from all directions. Being conscious and being mindful is the true freedom, where we are really in control of what we are doing. So it is something like we had been switched off this whole time. Now that we're turning on that switch, it'll take us some time to learn how to function consciously. So
Yeah.
that is what we need to do.
Yeah, correct. Agreed.
This last bit made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to let go that part of me.
Right.
I
Because
don't.
that's
I have
all
to.
we've
I
known.
have to learn to relive, or I have to learn to recognize myself, because I have to let go a certain part which I was, which worked for me and works for me, and sometimes, of course, doesn't work for me at all.
Right. Right.
Well,
Actually,
no,
right. We naturally won't feel like letting go of something that is working for us. That will.
I mean, even if it's
never.
not working, it's so dear to me, that part
Yeah.
of that it's easy, or it's dear, or it's comfortable, or it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's the whole thing. That is the main exercise for all of us, to
like,
evaluate what is it that
Hmm.
is serving us. And then if we've decided that this is not serving us, then finding a solution to that.
I hope we're not on recording because it's not in context, but can
We
I say
are, we are.
something?
Wait, I'll stop the recording.
Okay, this is not in context. Like every
Wait,
morning,
wait. I think we're still recording. I just stopped the